that, take your questions. Go to AP. Jara.
Thanks, General Ryder. So back to the drones. Can you unequivocally say that none of the drones that are being spotted are DoD assets or something that's being tested within the Defense Department? Are all of these either civilian or otherwise, but just not Department of Defense drones?
You're talking about the drones in New Jersey up and down the... Yes, they are not DoD assets.
None of them are?
To my knowledge, none of them are.
Okay. And are there any sort of experimental programs going on where maybe drones are being tested that...
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. What about the ones that are flying over military bases at this point? Have there been any possibilities of collecting what sort of information these drones are doing or anything like that?
Yeah, again, just to kind of put this into context, and I know that our colleagues at the White House, FAA, DHS, FBI have all made this point. So over 1 million drones registered in the United States, and on any given day, approximately 8,500 drones are in flight. And so the vast majority of these drones are going to probably be recreational or hobbyist. They're going to be commercial drones, used in things like architecture, engineering, farming, or they could be used for law enforcement. Is it possible that some of those drones could be up to malign activity? It's entirely possible, but the vast majority, that is not, the case. And in the case of drones flying near or over U.S. military installations, that in and of itself, just given the volume of drone flights we see on a given day, is not something that's new. We take all of those seriously. We will typically, when we detect them, attempt to classify them and take appropriate measures. Is it possible that some of those are surveilling? Absolutely. But can you make that assumption in every case? Not necessarily. So in each case, commanders have the authority, installation commanders and authorities have the authority to respond appropriately, and will continue to do that.
Pat, last year, U.S. Transcom and U.S. Air Mobility Command signed an agreement with a group called the National Aerospace Research and Technology Park. This is in Atlantic County, New Jersey, and the agreement was to create a test and evaluation corridor for UAS, unmanned aerial systems and advanced air mobility. Is it possible that these drones that are being seen in New Jersey are part of that corridor that was created a year ago to test these kind of drones and unmanned systems?
Yeah, and I know you're not going to be surprised by this, but I've had some of your other colleagues reference that press release. I did check with the Joint Staff to see if that was possible, and again received confirmation: no military operations, no military drone or experiment operations in this corridor.
On drones for a second, what was the thinking behind sending additional detect and track systems to Picatinny Arsenal and Naval Weapons Station Earl, and are there other facilities that might get more of these systems in the future?
Yeah, so a couple things. So first of all, again, a lot of focus on this right now for all the obvious reasons, some of which includes those sitting in this room here. And so we're going to take this seriously. And so ensuring that installations, in this case Picatinny and Earl, have the capabilities they need to detect, to identify and track as appropriate in the event there's drone activity near those facilities. To your other question, this is exactly what the counter unmanned systems strategy that DoD put out recently talks about, is looking at what are those priority installations, what are the trends when it comes to unmanned systems or unmanned aerial systems as well, and what does the DoD need to be doing in order to address that issue, particularly when it poses a potential threat to our personnel or installations. The thing is that I think we've all recognized the fact that unmanned systems are here to stay. They're a part of modern warfare, and whether it's here in the homeland or overseas, we want to make sure that we're doing due diligence to protect our forces and protect our equities from a national security standpoint. So I think you'll see us continuing to look at that, and it's something we're going to continue to take seriously.
What systems are being sent and when will they arrive?
In addition to some of the capabilities that are already on these installations, these capabilities essentially will enhance space authorities' ability to detect, identify, track UASs. For example, this could include active or passive detection capabilities, plus capabilities like the system known as drone busters, which, as you know, employs non-kinetic means to interrupt drone signals, affect their ability to operate. Right.
That it wasn't all that unusual to see some drones over military bases. You mentioned this is becoming more and more of a common occurrence in the use of drones. But what would constitute it as a threat? What is the benchmark, and have you been communicating with other military installations to be ready for more of these drones, and how to spot if it could be a threat before it might be too late?
Yeah. Again, it won't surprise you. This is not a new conversation for us within DoD. I mean, as I highlighted, drones flying, whether here or overseas, is not something new, right? And especially in the United States with 1 million registered drones and 8,500 flying on any given day. Similar to vehicles that may inadvertently approach a base, the same can be true for drones. As to what constitute a threat, that obviously has to be assessed on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the drone is doing, where it's going, and so I'm not going to provide a blanket definition, but again, the idea here is that by providing training, capabilities, resources, commanders are able to assess and make those determinations. The other thing that I think it's very important to remember is that when we're here in the homeland, the authorities that the U.S. military has to detect and track these kinds of things is much different than it would be if we were in a combat zone. In other words, the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities that we can employ outside the United States are much different for very good reasons. We don't collect intelligence on American citizens. And so that, of course, appropriately requires to work very closely with local, state, and federal authorities, law enforcement authorities, when necessary to address these threats.
And you mentioned the White House and the administration did share a bit of their assessment of what these drones are, but we know lawmakers are being briefed on Capitol Hill and members of the public. This isn't really, sitting well with them. They aren't really kind of taking this explanation for those that really saw these drones with their own eyes. So what would you say to them?
Well, again, I definitely don't want to minimize the significant interest and the concern that people have. But again, I think in the way that you now have this modern technology and the ability, you could go out of here right after this briefing and go and buy a drone, and you could fly it around your neighborhood. And as long as you're flying it appropriately and not in restricted airspace, there's nothing illegal about flying that drone. So again, just providing some perspective here, and I think the joint statement that we put out highlighted that the assessment in terms of what these reported sightings could be in terms of a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, law enforcement drones, as well as manned fixed-wing aircraft. Again, don't want to minimize it, but I think it's important to understand too just the volume of drone activity that will likely only increase into the future, and the fact that it is legal to fly drones, and if they go into restricted airspace, of course, we'll take appropriate action.
Just why does it have to be a classified briefing if these are just hobbyist drones, they're not military drones? Why is it a classified briefing on the Capitol Hill?
I'd have to refer you to Congress on that. Again, sharing as much information as we can here. I don't have the briefing in front of me, so I can't tell you specifically, what aspects are classified or not. I can assure you, though, that again, we are sharing as much information as we can based on what we know. Let me go to the other side of the room here, Chris.
Thanks, Pat. Two questions on drones. One, there's particular interest, perhaps by us, but also from the U.S. government, regarding the drones in New Jersey. Does the Pentagon have any indications that those drones in New Jersey are somehow different in size, activity, etc., than the drones that have been spotted at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Hill Air Force Base, and other locations in the past few days?
Chris, what I would tell you is we don't see a connection at this point between any of those activities. Again, just taking a step back here, 8,500 drone flights a day, but again, don't see a connection at this stage.
And then my second question, has the Pentagon determined who was responsible for the drone incursions over the bases in the UK over the past last?
Yeah, to my knowledge, still being looked at. I'd have to refer you to the UK MOD and US Air Forces in Europe.
Thank you. Have any of the drone sightings been accompanied with sightings of a large rectangular black object, sometimes called a monolith, often accompanied by Also sprach Zarathustra by Richard Strauss?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I would probably have to think back to the words of a very wise prophet, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who said, "These aren't the drones you're looking for." But beyond that, I'll just have to move along. Okay, let me go to Howard Altman, Warzone.
Thanks. Well, that was hard to top. I got two questions, one on the drones and one on Syria. I know you told Chris that these are not seeing, you're not seeing any connections, but in terms of visual or sensor data that is of the drones that have been seen over the U.S. bases, both CONUS and no CONUS, what similarities are you seeing in visual and sensor data?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. On your first question, I'm not going to have any information to provide in terms of sensor data, other than, again, as I highlighted earlier, we are employing a variety of both passive and active sensors in order to detect as it pertains to DoD installations. And of course, we're not the only ones in this business when it comes to U.S. civil airspace. I'd certainly refer you to DHS and FAA on that front. Last question, Mike.
I know you're hoping for a drone question, so let me oblige you.
Okay.
You say that there are these sightings. Why do most of the sightings seem to be around New Jersey? I mean, it's the Garden State and all, but what is so special about New Jersey that it's getting most of the attention from this? I've never seen drones here. I've never seen them flying around Virginia. And second question, drone-related question. I know we are building on you're developing the military's ability to detect drones. Are you also working on their ability to defeat drones in the air?
Yeah, absolutely. To answer your last question, and I would encourage you to go take a look at the counter unmanned strategy that we put out, just last week, that talks about the approach that we're going to take. And that includes the ability to defeat drones both kinetically and non-kinetically. And so, again, looking at places like Ukraine, we've seen the impact that drones can have on the battlefield, and so it's something that the department's taking very seriously. As for your question in terms of the preponderance of sightings, reported sightings in the New Jersey Northeast corridor, I can't answer that question, Mike. Again, personal experience, I have seen drones in D.C. I've seen drones, personal drones flying around. And as I've mentioned from this podium before, one of my close relatives is a private drone operator. And I'm sure some of that person's neighbors have often wondered, what that drone is doing. So, without taking a holistic snapshot of every single privately operated drone across the United States, some of which can be that big, some of which can be that big, it's hard to know specifically, why at this point in time. And again, as was highlighted in the joint statement, the current assessment explains what we think most of those are, to include piloted manned aircraft. The last thing I would say on it, again, completely understand the concerns, completely, will reinforce we're taking this seriously. It's sometimes when you focus on something, suddenly you notice more. And so, there's always the potential that because of the heightened awareness, now we're just more aware of this particular issue. But again, we'll continue to take this very seriously. We'll continue to take appropriate action if and when it's deemed that any of these drones near U.S. military installations pose a threat. But in the meantime, again, I think it's been very clear that we've not identified that any of these reported drone sightings were assessed as anomalous, or that it presented a national security or public safety risk over civilian airspace in New Jersey or other states in the Northeast. All right.
This is part of this testing corridor between Dover Air Force Base and Joint Base McGuire.
Yes. Thank you. All right.
I can ask you a follow-up. I apologize. It's based off his question.
Now, you just came in the briefing room, so.
Negative. I came in.
You flew in on your drone?
But thank you.
That's okay.
Normally my pattern. But you talked about the military bases. Has there been a surge in counter detection equipment that has been sent to military bases? I'm aware that DHS has sent other equipment to the New Jersey area. Is any of that include DoD equipment, or is that strictly all DHS?
As I highlighted earlier, for Picatinny, we did send some additional active and passive detection capabilities, as well as some counter drone capabilities. Those are the only ones, and Earl, those are the only ones I'm tracking right now. But again, if we need to look at other installations, we certainly can, but I don't have anything else to.
When you say active and passive, I mean, that is just strictly detection, or is that actually to bring drones down?
So active and passive detection, different methods to be able to detect drones using different capabilities, right? So passive measures would essentially be, it just has the ability to receive signals without emitting signals. Whereas active would be like radar. I bounce the signal off and it bounces back, right? And then separate from that would be counter UAS capabilities, things like let me make sure I get the name right here, like drone busters, which essentially emits a signal which is able to interrupt the signal on the drone, which can affect its flight. So that's a methodology that we have that is able to essentially bring drones down non-kinetically should we need to do that.
Anything in the DHS equipment similar to this, or is that?
I mean, I'd refer you to them, but short answer is yes. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate it.